Welcome to the Be Well at USask podcast. My name's Peter Headley. I serve as a Director of Student Affairs and Services at the university. This podcast is for all members of the University of Saskatchewan community. Each week, members of our community will join me to share ideas and provide guidance on all aspects of being well. And we'll be highlighting campus initiatives and resources designed to engage and support you. In these challenging times, we hope the ideas and information we share will help. In this episode, I'm going to be talking to Marken and Jill McMillan, who are learning specialists at Student Learning Services, which is part of the University Library. We're going to be talking about how students can succeed academically, especially during the transition to remote learning, and the ways in which Student Learning Services can support them. Well, welcome to the podcast, Liv and Jill. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to be here.
So, Jill, maybe you could start off by telling me a little about your roles and the ways in which your team supports students.
So officially, I am a graduate writing specialist, but my background in education means that I have a lot of experience helping both graduate as well as undergraduate students. And here at Student Learning Services, we are here to help all University of Saskatchewan students from first-year undergrads to third-year PhD students. We help everyone.
And how about yourself, Liv, about your role?
My official job title is Learning Specialist, and I manage the Writing Help Center on campus and with Student Learning Services.
So are your services just meant for students who are struggling, or can anyone access the services?
This is actually a really common misconception that students might have. They might think that Student Learning Services is all about remedial help, and that's not the case whatsoever. The reality is that all students benefit from accessing our services. So if they need support with research or study or math or writing, we are a destination that should always be at the forefront of their mind. We welcome students from all walks of life, and we find that high-achieving students often connect with our services because they recognize that it's really good for their academic as well as personal development to figure out, hey, where are some areas where I'd like to improve? What are the supports that I can connect with? And so they reach out and connect with us. So we really are here to support students from all different programs, all different years as well. And I like to say that the students who are connecting with us are really starting to establish a really good foundation of professional habits in terms of recognizing, hey, this is an area where I'm doing okay, but I think I could really refine or hone my skill set, and this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to reach out to some of the supports that I know are available. And this is really in keeping with what we need to do as professionals in our fields later on. We want to connect with people who can support our learning and development.
And I know there's some students who feel that they come to university perhaps not equipped with all of the skills that they need. And presumably those students, wherever they were from, whether they're students from Canada or students from other parts of the world, could come and have a conversation with your team to talk about working on some of those skills or even gaining some of those skills.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So I'm aware that many students have found the sudden transition to remote learning quite challenging at the end of the main part of the academic year. Liv, what tips or resources would you recommend to those students who are taking courses this spring and summer term?
Yeah, it's the transition that many didn't think they would ever have to make, but here we are. I think there are a few things to keep in mind. I mean, we're all have transition to home environments, and so there can be lots of distractions. So being kind of flexible in how you manage your time might be important. Dealing with interruptions, for example, is just going to be a reality, or having tech connection issues might be a reality. So I guess I have three things to keep in mind, just to keep it simple. First of all, there might be difficulties around motivation. So part of keeping yourself motivated is to think about what your goals are in taking the class, whether that's your immediate goals or your larger goals. That can help you reconnect to your purpose, feeling of that you're doing this for a reason. And it can be easy to forget when you're mired in readings or memorization or papers, especially at the fast clip that spring and summer session can move along. taking time to reflect on that is really important to staying motivated, and it can actually save you time in the long run. So notice your growth as well. So that sense of mastery, you're getting better at something, that can be something that we can forget in the moment. So going back to the beginning of the time, thinking how much you've learned over time can be really motivating as well. The second thing next to motivation is maybe feeling a loss of connection. So we don't have those peers around us in that immediate sense, and we might feel like it's hard to connect with our professor or get to know them. Now, most profs in your classes will have mechanisms for building community in the class. So they'll have a discussion board, for example, or extra meeting time or office hours. And those might seem like extra things to think about or fluff in the course, but definitely take full advantage of engaging in them to build connection. That will help motivation as well. And interestingly, it might also be easier to connect with your professor online than it would be face-to-face, especially in a larger class. And just remember that all the research shows that connecting with your prof and other students in the class make a big difference to how much you succeed in the class and how motivated you are. And the final thing is obviously time management. So get things going early. Maybe you're starting classes tomorrow, and you might want to set up access and equity services accommodations if you need extra time for exams. You might take a look at the syllabus and the reading list, think about what sort of resources you're going to need, and survey the structure of the class so that you can translate it into a schedule. So you have these tight timelines. Think about when your major deadlines are, when you're going to be needing to write, when you're going to be needing to memorize and read. And so then build your schedule from there. One thing to keep in mind is, especially if you have anxiety, which a lot of people do right now, and distractions, which a lot of people do right now, try doing shorter study sessions rather than these 3 or 4 hour long slogs. So there's something called the Pomodoro method, which is the Italian word for tomato. And it was this method was developed by somebody who used a tomato timer. So one of those twist kitchen timers that you use to time cooking, but he used it to set these 25-minute study sessions or writing sessions or work sessions. So you're breaking something down into short sprints. So before you start the sprint or the Pomodoro 25-minute session, and you can adapt that to 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever your attention span is that day. Before you do that, you set a goal for what you want to accomplish in that session. Then you do the sprint or the study session, and then take a break. Nothing too absorbing, so maybe don't go play your favorite video game, but walk around the block or have a cup of coffee, play with your dog. And then after you've taken a short break, 5-10 minutes, go back and review what you studied. And then after you're done a few of these sprints, maybe you only get one done that afternoon. Maybe you want to go back and do another one later. Maybe you could do 3 or 4 in a row, depending on how kind of rested and ready to study you are. Reflect on it. So think about, how did that go? Do I need to adjust anything next time I do that sprint? Maybe this is a bad time of day for me to be studying. Maybe I'm tired right at this time of day. So that's called metacognition, or thinking about thinking. And really successful learners have that ability to think back and sort of look at their performance and tweak so that they do better next time. It's similar to what athletes do when they're trying to improve their performance. So we can apply that to studying as well. So those would be my 3 things: managing your time and breaking it into shorter chunks, mapping things onto a calendar, and making sure that you take opportunities to connect. And a lot of these will help to feed that difficulty around motivation.
Yeah, those are all great tips. Something I actually didn't tell you is I started my career teaching university study skills. So all of these things suddenly feel very, very familiar to me. I know that I think one of the important things you mentioned there about studying in a virtual environment is that actually there are opportunities for greater engagement rather than less, particularly as people become, both professors but also students, become more familiar with that style of learning.
Yeah, that's right. Definitely. Not everybody likes online learning, but we can definitely find ways to make it work. And some people really prefer it.
Yeah, that's certainly what we're hearing in some cases. And as you mentioned, particularly with large classes, to actually feel more connected, more engaged with the professor.
Right.
So for the coming terms, not necessarily that students would feel overwhelmed by things, but if they were, but how would any student reach out to Student Learning Services for support?
So we have multiple channels for students to connect with us. The most obvious and the one that we would want students to bookmark is the library.usask.ca website. This is where a lot of the university library and student learning services programming is going to be present and most up to date. So that site again is library.usask.ca. On that website as well, you'll see there's a little floating button on the library page, and this is present on all library pages, and it's called Ask Us, and it's this little button, and if you click on that, during most regular business hours, there's going to be a person who is going to be responding to your questions really quickly, and I know that those hours are posted on our website as well. They change a little bit depending on the time of year, but certainly most business hours, the Ask Us functionality is available. If you want to get in contact with learning specialists like myself or Leave, you can email studentlearning@usask.ca, and that will be directed to the person who can provide the most appropriate response to any question that you have. And lastly, we also have social media. So if you are on Instagram, you can follow us at USask Library.
Yeah, we'll put all of those details in the down bar on the podcast. So I'm asking all guests to share one thing they're doing under these strange circumstances to be well right now, maybe something that brings them joy or a sense of connection. What would that thing be for you, and how do you find it helps? Maybe Liv, maybe you can go first.
Sure. One thing I'm noticing actually is that I'm connecting with my family a lot more than I was before. Like I'm talking to my parents every day and my sister. So meeting them on Zoom. I'm fortunate to have a sister who has a Zoom account where we can talk for more than 40 minutes has been really great.
And how about you, Jill?
Similar to Leave, I've been making sure that I'm connecting with my family a lot. I'm not local to Saskatoon, so I'm used to having to make use of technology and phone calls in order to keep in touch. I really enjoy creating like care packages for my niece and nephew that makes me feel connected to them. But in terms of a daily routine, definitely long walks on a daily basis are really helping with my own mental well-being. It's useful to get that fresh air, take advantage of all of the walking areas that we have in the city. I think one of the privileges that we have being in Saskatoon, it's quite easy to stay safely distant from fellow walkers, but you still get to see people outside with their dogs, and it's nice to get out there and enjoy the nice weather as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that for my family, we're actually making an intentional excuse to go to different parts of the city that we don't necessarily know or we haven't been to before to actually become familiar with during this period. So to just intentionally choose a different area to go to. Yeah, I know that's been really enjoyable for us. And even just the familiarity, getting to know the city properly.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So is there a final thought that each of you would want to leave listeners with, either about the work that you do or just in general?
I think just always feel comfortable reaching out. We enter this type of work for a reason, and it's because we sincerely enjoy working with students. I've been in education for about 10 years now, and I stay in the realm of education because I love working with students. So we're always happy to connect. We're here to help. We've heard all sorts of questions in our careers, so nothing really throws us. And we've likely heard a question that you might have had in the past. So connect with us. We want to make sure that your learning experience is really good.
That's great. How about you, Liv? Yeah,
I would just reiterate what Jill said and add that, you're a student at the U of S, you have access to these services, they're free. So take advantage of them and don't feel shy about using them.
Yeah, that's definitely an important message. Well, listen, thank you so much, both of you, for taking the time to talk with me this morning and share these messages.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Be Well at USask podcast with me, Peter Headley, and thanks again to Liv and Jill for joining me and sharing. USask students can connect with the Student Learning Services team through the contact details and links in the down bar. please check in again for further episodes and more content related to being well. In a future episode, I'll be speaking to Liv and Jill again about how to succeed in your research and writing assignments and how to access some great online resources. Please subscribe and share this podcast. You can find us on multiple platforms, including YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. We'd also love to hear from you, so please post comments and questions, and we'll look to include them in future episodes. Also, if there's a person you'd like to see as a guest or a topic you'd like us to cover, please let us know. In the next episode, I'm going to be talking to Kim Matheson and Brock Edgerton from USask Student Employment and Career Centre. We're going to be talking about career options for students graduating this summer, as well as employment options for students whose summer plans may have changed significantly as a result of the COVID situation. We'll also be exploring the ways in which the team at SECC may be able to help. So until next time, stay safe and be well.